So we're going to start talking about questions today, and we've been working with questions since the beginning of the year. One of the very first things that you guys learned was tu t'appelles comment, what is your name? And we've been using questions on a daily basis, but we haven't actually talked about how to put questions together. So now that you have more vocabulary, we're going to learn how you can take that vocabulary and put it together into questions. So you can not just answer questions, but you can actually be the one creating the questions. So first, we're going to just do a quick little comparison here. Quelle est la différence? What is the difference? So over here we have tu vas au cinéma vendredi. Tu vas au cinéma vendredi. Vous faites souvent du sport. Vous faites souvent du sport. Il ne joue pas au football. Il ne joue pas au football. So pause the video a second if you need to think about what those mean and what the difference is between the phrases on the left and the phrases on the right, and how you could tell that there is a difference between the left and the right. So our first sentence here means you go to the movie theater Friday. We have the exact same chunk of words here. The only thing that changed in terms of what we can see is the question mark at the end. The only thing that changed in terms of what we heard was the intonation. So even if you didn't have this written in front of you, if you were only listening, you should have been able to hear a difference between those two. The first one again was tu vas au cinéma vendredi. Notice how my voice drops at the end. The second one is tu vas au cinéma vendredi. My voice goes up at the end. We do that in English as well to indicate a question. So our first one is the sentence, you go to the movie theater on Friday. Our second one is the question, are you going to the movie theater on Friday? Literally the only difference between that statement and that question is the tone of the voice and the punctuation at the end. The exact same chunk of words can be both a statement and a question, which is why it's really important that when you're speaking, you make sure you're using the right intonation. Your voice is either dropping or rising, because that same chunk of words can mean two different things. So we have the same situation with the other ones here. Vous faites souvent du sport means you often do sports. The question then, vous faites souvent du sport? Do you often do sports? In English, quite often we add the word do or does to a question to indicate that it's a question. We stick that at the beginning, and that tells the listener right away from the very first word, hey, this is going to be a question. Notice that even though we would say, do you often do sports, there's still only one form of faire here. We're not putting anything extra at the beginning. It's the same exact chunk of words as the sentence. Our third one was il ne joue pas au football, which would mean they don't play soccer. The second option, il ne joue pas au football, don't they play soccer? Remember that you can add, or you can create negative questions. It's not something we use a lot, but it is something that you can do in French simply by taking the verb and making it negative. Now it's a negative question. They don't play soccer. You're kind of checking on that information. So we can take the exact same chunk of words, put it together, and depending on the punctuation, period or question mark, and the intonation, falling or rising, it can be either a sentence or a question. So on this note sheet, we are only going to talk about this one little bitty part today. We're going to talk about two different types of questions, just so you have like a familiarity with them and you understand the difference between them. You don't have to be a master at putting these together, but I just want you to understand the basic premise of how they're assembled. Basic yes or no question formation is just like putting together a sentence. That's the other thing. Notice that all of these questions that we're dealing with, they're all yes or no questions. Either you do or you don't go to the movie theater on Friday. Either you do or you don't often play sports. Either they do or they don't play soccer. So for right now today, we're going to start with just yes/no questions to keep it nice and simple. And for each of these questions, we're going to learn a little formula. So formule means a formula. And our formula for this is going to be the same way that we put together other sentences. Subject, which is who does the action. Verb, which is the action itself. And other, which is any other detail we might need. Okay, and then of course, question mark at the end. You need to have the question mark or it's not actually a question, as we've seen. If you leave nothing at the end, we're probably going to assume that there should be a period there, and then that makes it a sentence. So your punctuation is really super important here. Okay, so subject, verb, other. Now, I have a line for you to write an example. I actually have 3 different examples. You can pick whichever one you like best or write down all 3 of them. We're going to come back to these same questions on other days as we add this together piece by piece. So, tu fais du vélo? Do you go biking or do you bike? Il joue au volley. Does he play volleyball? Vous parlez français? Do you speak French? So all of these are assembled with these 3 different parts. Tu, il, and vous are subjects. Fait, joue, and parler are verbs. Du vélo, au volley, and français are the other part of this. So like I said, either pick one question that you're going to write as your example, or if you want to write 2 or even all 3 of them down, so you have a couple different examples, this is how we do a basic yes-no question. So we're going to start today with some basic yes-no questions. And I've put together 5 simple questions that I think you should be able to assemble in French. So numéro 1 is asking, do you want to play soccer? Now, the trouble that students usually have with this is they try to go through and they try to translate every single word to separately. Okay, you cannot do that. It does not work because as we talked about, this do that we add in English, you don't need a word there for French. Do you want to play soccer is simply the sentence you want to play soccer. And remember that we don't need a separate word for to. To is part of play. When you see to in front of a verb, it just tells you that you're using the infinitive form of that verb. You don't need to conjugate it. Okay, so the same thing applies to these other ones. There's probably a word in that sentence that you're going to ignore. You don't actually need it there. And if the question format confuses you, what I want you to do is I want you to reword that as a sentence. Instead of asking, do you want to play soccer? Think about how you would just say, you want to play soccer. Put that together, and that's your question. So if we use that procedure, then we would come up with this. Tu veux, you want, jouer au football, to play soccer. Boom, that's it. That's our question. If we had a period at the end, it would mean you want to play soccer. Because we put a question mark at the end, it means do you want to play soccer? Okay, so same way that you already know how to put together sentences, we're just sticking a question mark at the end, and that magically turns it into a question. So I want you to try to do that with the other 4 here. We're going to pause the video. You're going to figure out how would you put that together. Think about it like a sentence. Instead of are we going to go shopping, how would you say we are going to go shopping? This is in the future. Put that together, stick a question mark at the end. It makes it a question, okay? So numéro 2, are we going to go shopping? Now, once again, we have way too many words here. We do not need a word for are. Going, ignore that ing, just go, okay? Essentially, you're putting together the phrase, we go to go shopping. Nous allons. Now remember, to go shopping in French, they say to do the stores. So nous allons faire les magasins. When we stick a question mark at the end, we read it as nous allons faire les magasins. Are we going to go shopping? It's happening in the future. Numéro 3, do they like to go skiing? Ignore that do at the beginning. Ils aiment faire du ski. They like to ski or to go skiing. We stick a question mark at the end and we read it as ils aiment faire du ski. Do they like to go skiing? Numéro 4. Does madame speak French? Again, ignore the word does at the end. You're simply putting together the sentence, Madame speaks French. Madame parle français. Madame speaks French. Question mark at the end, change the intonation. Madame parle français. Does madame speak French? And remember, we can do this with negatives as well. So if we want to ask, y'all don't do homework, we're saying y'all don't do homework as a sentence. When we stick a question mark at the end, it turns it into a question. Vous ne faites pas les devoirs? So vous ne faites pas les devoirs, y'all don't do homework. So that's how we put together some basic questions, yes, no questions, using what we already know how to say. Now, these are nice, simple questions. If you are ready for a challenge, I would like you to attempt the second part of this, which is taking those same simple questions, and all we're doing is adding detail to them. So we're taking the question, do you want to play soccer? And we're just adding details. Not just do you want to play soccer, but do you want to play soccer with me in the park tomorrow? Not just are we going to go shopping, but are we going to go shopping at the mall this weekend? This is really what I want to work on when we talk about doing good, detailed sentences, is just taking basic things that you can say and then adding more information. So you can start with the questions that you already have and just figure out how you would add those extra details to it. Use your vocab sheets, use everything that you have in your binder to just add on to what you already have so we can make some more complex sentences. So, do you want to play soccer with me in the park tomorrow? Well, we already know, do you want to play soccer was this. Tu veux jouer au football? We're just going to take all those little pieces and add them one at a time. With me, avec moi, in the park, au parc, tomorrow, demain. Tu veux jouer au football avec moi au parc demain? Okay, now if I had just given you this whole big long question and said, hey, translate that into French, you would probably freak out, most of you, okay? But that's something you can absolutely do. You just have to break it into pieces. So numéro 2, are we going to go shopping at the mall this weekend? We already figured out this part. We are going to go shopping at the mall. We add the phrase au centre commercial this weekend, ce weekend. So now we have a much more complicated question. Nous allons faire les magasins au centre commercial ce weekend. Notice even though the question is a lot longer, I'm still going to raise my voice at the end because it's a yes-no question. Numéro 3. Do they like to go skiing with friends in winter? We already knew, ils aiment faire du ski. Do they like to go skiing? We're going to add with friends, avec des amis, or avec des copains, in winter, en hiver. Ils aiment faire du ski avec des amis en hiver. Numéro 4. Does Madame speak French when there is no school? So, does Madame speak French was our question. Madame parle français. When is the word quand. There is no is the same idea as there isn't. So that's the phrase il n'y a pas. And then school is the word école. Now pas is followed by de, so we're going to connect these two parts and say quand il n'y a pas d'école. Madame parle français quand il n'y a pas d'école. And numéro 5, y'all don't do math homework in the library. Vous ne faites pas les devoirs is y'all don't do homework. Now we want to change it specifically to math homework. So we're just going to add de maths because you say the homework of math. So that comes after the word homework, okay? And then we add our location in the library, à la bibliothèque. Vous ne faites pas les devoirs de maths à la bibliothèque. You don't do math homework in the library. So again, we can put together much more complex ideas. You're just going to start with the basic elements, subject, verb, whatever other information we need, and then look at, we can just keep adding more others and more others and more others. Not that every question you're going to compose will look like this and be this complex, but I just want to show you it's something that you are absolutely capable of. Okay, so starting today with yes/no questions, basically you can put together a question the exact same way as you can a sentence, subject, verb, other information. Just stick a question mark at the end and make sure that your voice goes up when you're asking it.